Today I'm gonna talk about pagan rituals, blood sacrifices, and old Disney cartoons. Today I'm gonna tell you everything you never wanted to know about Christmas in Sweden. Before Christianity came to the north, there was a pagan ritual called Jul, and it was celebrated with lots of drink and blood sacrifices called blod. The first mention of Jul was in 900 AD, when King Harald Fairhair wanted to drink Jul while out at sea. But the most detailed description of pre-Christian celebrations came from Snorri Sturlason around 1230 AD. Paraphrasing a bit, he tells us how people gathered at the temple and there was a great big party. Beer was drunk, animals were slaughtered, and the blood was collected. They painted the altars red with blood, and blood was splattered on the people as well. Then the chief would start a toast, first to Odin and then to the other gods, and then in memory of highborn friends. That tradition was called Midvinterblot, or Alvablot, or Julblot. Either way, it definitely sounds like a party I would have liked to attend. Now, what does that have to do with Christmas? Well, the Swedish word for Christmas is jul, and that name is directly taken from the pagan Jul celebration. When Christianity came to Sweden, all the old blood sacrifices were stopped. But to offer some sort of compromise, they merged the old Jul tradition with Christmas. So people could still celebrate Jul, but on a slightly different date. The winter solstice occurs at the end of December, but that's not actually when Midvinterblot was celebrated. Midwinter in Sweden was in January instead, but apparently it's close enough to December 24, so people were satisfied. So what's this about December 24? Well, in many places in the world, Christmas is celebrated on December 25th, but not in the Nordics. This is actually because of how a day was defined before there were mechanical clocks. In the Nordics, a day was defined as ending when the sun goes down, which in December is actually before 3 p.m. We live in perpetual bloody darkness and cold. That means that if Jesus was born on December 25th, which he wasn't by the way, then that day actually begins around 3 p.m. on December 24th. And that's why Swedes celebrate Christmas on the evening of December 24. Speaking of 3 p.m. on Christmas Eve, that's also a very significant time in Swedish Christmas celebrations. That's when Donald Duck is shown on TV. Every Christmas, more than 4 million Swedes sit down to watch a Disney Christmas special. It's the second most viewed show in Sweden, only beaten by the Eurovision Song Contest. This insane tradition has been kept up for more than 60 years. It started in 1960, and it's still an integral part of the Swedish Christmas celebration. There are many reasons why strange traditions emerge. This one is actually quite simple to explain. In 1960, there weren't any cartoons on TV, so this was the only time of the year that children and grown-ups could watch cartoons on TV. Over the years, this grew into a much beloved tradition. Cynical kids all over Sweden scoff at this tradition. They say it's corny, it's weird, but still, they somehow end up in front of that TV at 3 p.m. every Christmas. After Donald Duck, the Christmas dinner starts in Sweden, and like every Swedish holiday, it consists of a smorgasbord with herring, potatoes and meatballs. I'm not kidding, that's what you get at every Swedish holiday. There are a couple of special Christmas foods though. The Christmas ham is a must at every Swedish Christmas table. Boiled, breaded and oven baked. This is nice and salty and goes perfectly with Christmas bread or crisp bread. Prince sausages are small wieners with an interesting origin story. At first they were called siscon sausages, from a French word meaning small. But syskon was often misheard by the Swedes as syskon, meaning siblings. In the late 1800s, Sweden had 4 princes, Gustav, Oscar, Karl and Eugen, and through a weird transformation, this sausage became known as Prince sausage, referring to the royal siblings. Rice porridge is served on Christmas Eve morning. The Swedes have a lot of sugar and cinnamon in their porridge, but they're weird. As a half Finn, I prefer mine to be a little bit salty, no sugar added. Rice porridge. By the way, Americans, they put out milk and cookies for Santa Claus. We don't do that. We put out rice porridge for someone that's not quite Santa Claus, but almost. But I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about the Swedish Santa Claus later. Now, time for porridge. There's also Christmas baking in Sweden. Aside from Christmas bread, we have saffron buns called saffron cats, although I prefer to make saffron Pac-Man. Gingerbread is a must at Christmas. Making your own dough is the most fun, but yeah, we might buy some from the store instead. A strange tradition is the Aladdin or Paradis candy box. For some reason, one of these boxes is always present in a Swedish home at Christmas. And it's also the standard thing to buy if you forgot to buy a Christmas present and you need to buy something last minute. There's also a lot of chocolates and other types of Christmas candy, but I think that's typical for every country. So let's move on to something even more tasty. Swedes drink a lot during holidays, and Christmas is no different. Let's talk about the Swedish glögg, which has its origins around the year 1000 AD. Glögg is pretty similar to glühwein or spiced wine or mulled wine, something that's popular all over Europe. But the Swedish glögg is ridiculously sweet for one thing, and you put raisins and almonds in it. It's pretty good in small quantities. And don't forget the traditional Christmas liquor, spiced vodka, to make the awful herring go down easier. Cheers! Christmas beers are dark and, well, mostly dark. I prefer lager or IPAs. And let's not forget julmust. This is actually a non-alcoholic drink, but it's really popular in Sweden. Coca-Cola are selling tons of soft drinks all over the world during Christmas, but they have a little bit of a problem penetrating the Swedish market. And that's due to julmust, which is only sold during Christmas. Well, and Easter, but it's called Eastermust in that case. Then there's a lot of Christmas cocktails. Just throw in some apple flavors or cinnamon or orange and you can call it a Christmas drink. Or you can create the ultimate Swedish Christmas drink by mixing julmust and vodka. The drink of heroes and Vikings. Oh, so good. Now let's talk about some other Christmas traditions. Presents aren't called presents in Sweden, they're called klapp, as in julklapp. In the 1600s, people started to throw pieces of wood or straw dolls into each other's houses. The objects themselves weren't important, but there was a rhyme attached. You were supposed to give hidden critique in your rhymes, or a riddle, or a declaration of love. And these logs with Christmas rhymes were called julklapp. In modern times, this has merged with the Americanized tradition of giving presents, but the rhyming still remains. Many families write clever little rhymes to let the recipient guess what's inside the package. Sometimes it's really subtle, and sometimes it's not. For example, if I were to, for some reason, give someone food stuff for Christmas, I could write a rhyme that said, "You sure like a lot of cock, so here's a bottle of chicken stock." Or maybe not. Now let's get back to the Swedish version of Santa Claus. In Sweden, people used to believe in farm gnomes called tomtar. They looked a little bit like tiny grey versions of Santa Claus. When the German-style Santa Claus mixed with the Swedish customs, things became muddled a bit. The Swedish Santa Claus isn't called Santa Claus, he's called jultomten. Basically, he's a character that looks like Santa Claus, but has a name that indicates that he's an overgrown farm gnome. connected with pagan blood sacrifices. The Christmas tree also has pagan origins. It's believed that our ancestors worshipped a sun god, and since firs and spruces are green all year round, they were seen as a reminder that spring and lush greenery will return once more. But the decorated Christmas tree as we know it is a German tradition from the 17th and 18th century. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this little look at how to celebrate Christmas in Sweden. Like and subscribe, but most importantly, have a great day and a great Christmas.